My wife, 30F, is usually an angel of a woman but has recently formed a friendship with a woman whom I, 38M, personally believe is a bad influence on her. Not in a patronizing way, it is what it is. I never said anything about her childishness or her very radical misandry because frankly, it doesn't affect me. That is, until it did. A few months ago, my wife began pressuring me to do more around the house. Before you start judging me, we already split chores and child care. Admittedly, she had a bigger cut than me because she is a stay-at-home mom, but I do most of the cooking, breakfasts, and dinners. Lunch is her responsibility for her and the boys, and I take out the garbage, do laundry, and deep clean the bathrooms once a week. I also help with our boys' homework and such. She insists that I am not doing enough and that I should be doing more around the house. I tried having discussions with her, asking what she expected from me, and essentially, she said all the chores and childrearing should be my duty, and for months it seemed to be going nowhere. She said it was my duty more than once when speaking on this, which felt manipulative. It boiled over when we were out with friends one night, and she began talking about how I never helped out and how I use her as a house slave, literally her words. I will admit I saw red, and I didn't say anything that night, but the next day I asked my boss to give me reduced hours for the next little bit, due to stress. Then, I took over everything in the house. I cooked breakfast and made lunch for the boys before driving them to school, cleaned the house top to bottom, did every dish we had twice, and so on. My wife was blindingly happy and bragged to her friend that she finally had me worn in. That entire month, she didn't lift a finger around the house. Then she began asking why we never went on dates anymore and complaining that she wanted to get her nails done as they were growing out. I explained that I had to take that out of our budget so we could continue to afford everything else, but we could absolutely have a movie night in, and I could paint her nails for her. She was unhappy with that solution, so I asked her if she would want to get a part-time job to pay for either luxury. You would have thought I asked if she wanted to join a cult. She then asked if I could just pick up more shifts at work to cover her other expenses and use the phrase be a man, which I found more than a little insulting. I then asked her if she would be willing to go back to splitting the chores and such, which is when she began to catch on that the two were related. She yelled at me that I was being a manipulative prick for doing this and even claimed it was financial abuse. I stood strong for a while, but now I am questioning if I went too far. Update 1. I have never been in a situation like this before. I am a former addict myself, but I didn't have children then. That friend who I thought was a bad influence for my wife did more than just get her to hate on men. My wife recently admitted to using 2 substances for several months now after we had a blowout argument, and she agreed to get checked into rehab. She wanted me to lie to the kids, but I refused. As I was driving my wife to the rehabilitation center we decided on, she was screaming at me about how she can't believe I'm humiliating her like this, in reference to telling the boys and making her message her friend that they would not be hanging out or using together anymore. She was also screaming how she doesn't want to go, and that I am a controlling monster, and how threatening her with divorce and taking primary custody of the boys was too far, and I was insane. I just took it, and took it, and took it until I just couldn't anymore. And I screamed at her. I screamed that the woman I met would have rather offed herself than become a substance abuser around her sons, and how she disgusted me. I don't know if she knew how much I was considering leaving her, not because of the addiction, but the way she was acting, like she hadn't brought illegal substances into our home. Around me, a former addict myself, and around our boys. I am beginning to hate her for doing that. She was becoming exactly what she always cried about her mother being, and she was lucky I was here to see it before what happened to her goddamn sons. It makes me sick to say, but watching it sink in just how far she had spiraled felt good. Watching her realize that her actions have consequences was satisfying. She yelled a few more times, calling me an abusive jerk or whatever, but she was still crying, so I felt her heart wasn't in it. I plan on speaking to a lawyer. I don't want to divorce her, but I don't know how healthy our relationship could possibly be after this. I know yelling like that was wrong, but I don't feel bad, and that is the part that makes me think that maybe I shouldn't be married to her anymore. For her sake and my own. I don't know what else to do, and I'm so pissed that she detonated every aspect of our life. Update 2. Before you read, please know this is a vent post. I normally would never be like this, but I am beyond okay and need to get this poison out of my head before I go anywhere else with it. She was cheating. The friend I told her to cut off sent me videos of her dancing and getting handsy on this ugly hick-looking dude. I am goddamn destroyed. The boys are staying with my mother for a few days, and I'm taking the next week off work. I am so done. I have never been so angry in my goddamn life. She was so goddamn smug sending it, saying, in case you don't realize you're replaceable to her. Well, the free ride stops here. I hope she can get on Medicaid for the rest of her fixes. I'm done. I saved the video immediately, and I'm going to see a lawyer as soon as possible. I can't tell anyone yet because I want to do this right. I am so thankful my parents insisted on a prenup with what I, at the time, thought was an inhumane cheating clause. I've never been cheated on before, and I feel like tearing my goddamned hair out. I genuinely never thought she would turn out to be such a scummy piece of crap. I cannot handle this. I am not physically able to handle this. I haven't been able to keep food down, and I drank for the first time in over a decade last night. Then I woke up and had to pour the rest down the drain because I am about to spiral, and my boys don't need both mom and dad in rehab right now. I am so close to losing my goddamn mind. Update 3. So, I've been working on filing for divorce while she's in rehab, not just for the cheating, but because with that on top of everything else, and myself nearly sinking back into my own addiction due to the stress of the situation, I couldn't stand to even think of her anymore, and there's no healthy relationship that has room for that mindset. I honestly didn't want to be in a room with her again, to try mediation or counseling, Due to the fact that the last time I was alone with her, I raised my voice, and at the time even felt she deserved it. I of course now know that me doing that was terrible and could be considered abuse, yet another reason I should not be in a relationship with this woman. I moved all of her belongings to our guest room, minus the substances I found hidden in her bedside table. I took pictures of those in their hiding spot, then flushed them. I also removed her from my bank account and credit cards. I spoke to my boys, explaining the situation without demonizing their mother to the best of my ability, and they seemed to understand. I have no intention of abandoning them, and blood or not, they are my sons. Then she came home. The boys were, and still are, away at camp, a birthday present paid for by my mother. She was quiet, eyes on the ground from the moment I picked her up at the facility all the way home. Once we got home, I led her to the guest room silently, and she didn't take it well, crying before she could even take the first step. Throughout the next couple of weeks, I let her get settled, and though I stayed carefully neutral, I knew she could tell something was coming. But I wanted to be as fair as possible and try to let her get used to being out before I said anything, as that was one thing I myself hated about when I left rehab. Everything was flying at me so fast, I didn't have time to breathe. Finally, I asked her to sit on the couch, and I began explaining to her that I do not believe I can continue being married to her, and that I want a divorce. I should have known her reaction was all wrong. She didn't say anything at all, she only nodded and cried quietly as I spoke. I explained that I did not intend to hurt her, but I could not be married to her anymore, and that maybe both of us should focus on being the best parents we can be. I told her I had no intentions of kicking her out and that because of our prenup, the divorce should be cut and dry. She should be safe to begin looking for employment now, and once she has a job, I will help her find an apartment. At this, she stood and walked to her room. I let her because I thought she must have been overwhelmed, and this talk could wait. She didn't come out at dinner time, and I weighed whether I should leave her alone or not. Eventually, I decided to knock on the door and ask if she was hungry. Long story short, she had smuggled more substances into my house somehow, or she had a secret stash I was unaware of, and down them all. She was gone for several minutes in the ambulance, and she's in a medically induced coma because the doctors aren't sure exactly how much damage she's done to her brain. I feel like an absolute monster. Like I am the scum of the earth, like I should have just said nothing, like I should have just dealt with it, just held it in and stayed. I am responsible for this, and it's breaking me inside. I may not have the same love for her as I did, but I do feel so very sorry for everything she's been through. I haven't told my sons yet, and I am debating waiting until they're back from camp, so they can have a little more time without this on their minds on top of everything else. Update 4. Sorry I haven't updated in the past couple of months, but I'm sure you can guess why I wasn't feeling up to it. I know that everyone said that she was manipulating me or trying to make me stay with her, but honestly, even if that was the case, it didn't matter, because the moment she woke up we both started crying and talking, and we didn't stop for days. She went back into rehab for a little while, came out, and we did both couples and solo therapy for both of us. She seemed happy. She seemed better, and I had hoped that the crazy was over, that we would just be happy again. I didn't update then because frankly, I was scared of how everyone would react. I don't do well at getting yelled at. She promised me that if anything happened, if there was anything she needed to talk to me about, she wouldn't hesitate. Everything was going well, and now when I ask myself if there were signs she would go back or that she never stopped, the answer is no. Nothing, except the fact that she was using again at her friend's house while I was working and became unresponsive on her couch. I never got to see her again. The friend didn't even want to call an ambulance, her boyfriend had to convince her to. I don't think either of them was arrested that day, but I know from the paper she was picked up a couple of months ago for selling. Everyone kept telling me to go to the police, and frankly, maybe I should have, but with the way the police act, it wouldn't do much good. Since then, I've been drifting terribly. I took up terrible habits again, something I quit before I got married because she hated the smell. I hate it now too, the smell, I mean, but the hand to mouth is nice. My sons are in therapy and are taking the loss as well as they could be expected to. The younger two talk about her a lot, but the eldest is mostly angry. I'm thankful he doesn't seem to want to say things to his brothers about it, but I always let him tell me anything he's thinking, even when it breaks my heart. I know that maybe everyone here has an idea of who my wife was, but one thing that you could never deny was how much she loved our boys. They were her pride and joy, absolutely everything to her. I miss her. I miss her so much it feels so painful to even breathe. There's never music when I get home anymore, and I hate it. I hate the quiet so much that some days before I go inside, I sit in the car and just cry because I know she won't be there. I haven't even been able to clean out her side of the bathroom yet. It hurts too much to think about getting rid of her perfume or her toothbrush. I haven't felt like writing for obvious reasons, but there's something that feels important now, so I will. Valentine's Day is tomorrow. On the way home from work recently, I caught myself calculating flower prices before I remembered that I have no one to give them to unless I put them on her grave. I remember being pissed off at how expensive roses were getting, and now that seems so silly. I just wanted to say, if you have someone you love, please cherish them. Do something extra nice for the person you love tomorrow. Nothing crazy, but maybe you can dance around the living room to your song or read to each other. Something soft or good, to let them know you're real, and really, really there. I know that's so cliche and corny, and if Alex were here now, she would actively bully me. Turns out it was true, life is short.